To Carl DeGregorio's Death Session number 30. Dirty 30. Making the rounds a little bit, making it count. I'm gonna leave the number alone and talk about something I'm discovering, as life occurs. And if you've been paying attention to Hollywood, and goings on, and contraction of the industry, and how Los Angeles is blighted, and it's there's a viral clip where Rob Lowe says it's cheaper for this company to ship 100 Americans to Budapest to shoot a show than it is to go up the street to use one of the studios. And that's indicative of some kind of topsy-turvy, upside-down world. Obviously, California taxes or what have you. I'm not up to date enough to know why that is the case. But obviously, that would be something to address and something to, if we want to preserve it. And then there's the thing that scares me the most is, people, I'm not for personalities kind of being so on display that they could either be detrimental to projects, or I won't get specific, but the idea that people are gleeful on either side of the aisle, or people are gleeful at loss of jobs for fellow citizens, be it in Hollywood or in DC or wherever. I'm not for the gleefulness of that, as if it's a vindication of a viewpoint. So that's as far as I'll go with that. And I have a vested interest because I left my beloved town of New York to come to LA, the land of dreams, much like New York, but for a specific set of dreams in entertainment. And so obviously I left some great years on the table with my dad still around, and my mom and dad together, and being able to hang like I did in New York. I left a lot of those years on the table to do this. And so if California is not option number one, I think that's a tragedy and a travesty. So hopefully there's a solution, and hopefully there's a reason that we can kind of rally around it, and appeal to our better angels and the smart people that are plentiful in our industry, but maybe not the loudest at this point. If these are the kind of truths, that it's cheaper to go to Budapest with a contingent of hundreds than it is to shoot in Burbank or Culver City, for crying out loud. And all the infrastructure is there, so I don't know why it's forsaken, and I don't know why, if an emergency act can be enacted to rebuild, which, it has or has not, I don't know, but, the tax abatement thing, I don't know. You have to basically undercut these other small markets and make LA the greatest place to shoot because it's cheaper than Iowa, and Iowa can't look like LA, and New York, Toronto can't look like New York. But anyway, I'll leave those things alone for now. The only reason I bring it up is because it has been so slow for so many of us that I've been fortunate that not fortunate that I've been laid up, but I've been fortunate that I have this, which is turning out to be where I go to sort of keep my keel. And I'm also fortunate because I've had a real rash of voiceover auditions, and so I'm getting more and more fluent with the software, more and more fluent with the mic, and just all this stuff is becoming second nature. I'm getting good sound out of the booth, and it's a very makeshift booth, man. I'd love to, I love tiny house videos and micro apartment videos because I live in a small space, and I've always been sort of more appreciative of small space and efficiency and dual use stuff. And so I have a hallway that is not exactly a closet, but I open the closet doors. They're these sort of cabinet-ish kind of up and down, up and up above cupboard. It's almost like a closed cupboard, but it's a built-in. So I have that, and then I have one of those wire shelving units that are in kitchens and industrial stuff. And I have that, and I have clothes stacked on that, so it kind of looks like, an Old Navy. And then with clamps and with a shower rod, that was a suggestion of a buddy of mine. A shower rod going perpendicular. I hang moving blankets for the roof, and I hang them on the side with clamps. And I have basically a makeshift booth. And I haven't had a session remotely where the sound engineer did tell me it was quality enough, but it sounds good enough for auditions, and maybe it's quiet enough for pro session. But neighbor noise and leaf blowers and urban sprawl noise is gonna probably make that tricky for me in my apartment. But so I've had that to keep me busy while a lot of people have been complaining about slow going. And I've had, so the reason I bring up Hollywood and the slowness is because it is affecting everyone, even if and I don't want to sound like I'm humble bragging. It'd be better if I was booking some of this stuff, but it's great to be busy with that. But I haven't had an on camera for a long time. And so one came through, and I won't mention it, but it's a pretty good Netflix show. And it's a good get for my agent to get the appointment for me. So I'm kind of, I was excited about it. But I'm also trying to like make a progress in mindset, and through osmosis and through the over sharing of so many industry, internet reels and all the emails I get and all the casting sites I'm on, etc. I'm inundated with information, but I try to cherry pick and try to glom on to the ones that are the most helpful. And so I guess the idea is the mindset being, basically lay the track down and send it in, and do the same with the on-camera stuff. Now the self-tape thing, I've mentioned this before, is a boon for me and a frustration for a lot of working actors. But my usual go-to partner to help me with these is out of town, and so I had to adjust. And I'm glad I did, because my girlfriend was able to help me, and it was a female voice that was more in line with, appropriate for the scene that I had to lay down. And, she fixed my hair, and she did a lot of the stuff that my buddy's not going to get even near. So, she helped me out. But more importantly, I've been talking previously about composure and dark thoughts and composure, and also just what you can do to yourself in the name of wanting things, or in the name of trying to be perfect. And that's the best lesson you can get from, I've seen Michael Keaton talk about it. I've seen Patrick Stewart talk about it. I've seen so many people talk about it that, the best you can do is to do a good job, not get the job, and be remembered for something down the line. And that's kind of been the mantra that I've heard, but also to not try to please, right? And to show your version, do your thing, F the idea of being appropriate for the manners of the piece or whatever, you know what I'm saying. And I may be wrong in terms of how far I took it in this last case, but it's a co-star. So those are a lot of times you get the note, just throw it away. Don't do too much. And yeah, that is correct. But if the sides and the scene is so kind of, if you can envision it being shot, in this case, I can't really get into the specifics, but let's just say that I can imagine it being shot in a way where that part where I'm talking might actually not be the focus of the scene. Let's just say that. And that the two prominent leads of the show they're going to get coverage. Coverage meaning the camera's going to be on them, even when I'm talking. But the problem is, for the self-tape, you're just holding frame for the casting director, and they're watching you, and you can't overthink it, which sounds like I clearly did, right? And maybe that's true, but all of that probably has to go out the window. But at the same time, I know you're supposed to throw it away, and I know that if you're distracting with some insane character, or if you're distracting, that you're not likely to get the co-star, and the co-star is likely, rudiment. Like if you're playing a security guard and the guy says, "Hey, good night, Harry," and you say, "Good night, Ted," what are you gonna do with that? You're not gonna do a backstory. You're not gonna do your Meisner 2 minutes before entering. You're just gonna say night, Ted, and wear a fucking blue shirt and see if that jibes with the way the cast looks, and you might get a co-star that way. But anything other than that, I think, just for my own fun and for the idea that maybe you're auditioning for the casting director, not so much this part, I'm gonna do something with it. And I think, I don't know if this is true, but I think if they send you kind of a nebulous sides, they're trying to see if you will come up with something, because they don't know. Maybe it is sort of a throwaway in terms of this moment in the show, but if there's gold to be mined, why not do it? So that was the attitude that I took. But at first, working with my girl and with my foot in a boot, I am literally talking about my foot again. This is literally the saga. It turned out as a vlog for me to get my one-man show going, and now it's a recovery of ankle injury vlog with a little schmacting talk going on. But the point being, I like to set up. I'm fortunate to have really dialed in my self-tape kind of game. I have the background scrim thing that's like a giant that whole photography thing, and I hang that, and I have a panel light, and I have lavalier mics, and I can turn out a pretty good looking tape as long as I don't have to move too much, because it's a small space I have. But I have all these lamp stands and light stands, and I have the boot on, and it's been a long time, to be honest. This is how you know. Because when you're in the zone and you shoot a couple a week, or if you're lucky, at least once a week, when in the heyday of the, when they were making television and episodic, and there were auditions to be had, you would be setting up all the time and getting down to your routine. And now the muscle memory's there, and it's not rocket science or any kind of engineering, but it is. And I didn't have a boot, and so I have a boot, and I tripped on a fucking light stand, and nothing bad happened, but I had to save myself with my bad foot in the boot, which didn't hurt too bad, and might be sign of ultimate recovery, hopefully. So, but I did notice that it was taking a little bit extra out of me to get this all set. I was charging my lavalier microphone and just trying to get it ready, and so that when my girlfriend got here, I she's not an actress, although she could be, and she's got a great eye and could work in casting if she really thought that was something she wanted to do, because she could do anything. But it started out a little rocky because I'm worrying about clothes, and I took a gamble, and I wore a specific kind of thing that you wouldn't probably wear in person. And I had a neighbor lend me something specific that I needed, and we were worried about hair, because and she was, and then you're saying, I'm not. This is when you are starting to belabor the idea that it's really about the co-star, that the co-star is really just a vehicle for the plot, and the co-star says pull over, or can I see your ID, or there's a bouncer and says you're out of here. So it's not like you can do too much, and probably just your visage is really the calling card for whether or not you're right for the part. And so maybe I have a fighting chance here, but I was worried about all the other things. And then I guess I would like to not have the flare-ups, but cognitively, they say, when you cognitively can stop what used to be kind of a thing, I guess that's progress. But I was very much in a self-flagellating way, very frustrated with how the hell this scene was going to go. The frustration of not having my usual scene partner, who's almost also like a coach and is in the business, so that we tweak things and there's a vocabulary. And I was trying not to get frustrated with the lay person, and there was the idea of some overlapping dialogue, and there was two characters she had to sort of, throw these lines at, and I was like, do I just cut the line because it's throwing off the pace, and where should we do it? And I wasn't officially, off book, and so you get frustrated, and then you're showing your impatience, which is, unfortunate, and it was really starting to tank. To be honest, the whole fucking thing was starting to tank. And if you don't think that that's going to come across, then, you got another thing coming. And so I was in jeopardy of tanking. I know what tanking is. I know what bombing is. And, I've bombed enough on stage and stand up that you know how to ride it out. That was one time many, many years ago at the either the Brea or the Irvine Improv on a Tom Segura show. Way back in the wet day, I went down there with those guys and I bombed, and I did a good 10 minute set, and I had to be in Florida to do a road gig that weekend, and it was one of the early growth spurts that I bombed, and it wasn't the end of my life. And because I was doing enough, and that's the idea of doing a lot of stand-up or doing a lot of this stuff, is I was doing enough that I knew I'd live to fight another day. You know how comics are. They were laughing at a couple of insane Carl D quirks at the time. So it was more amusement for the ride back. They were kind of laughing, and nobody was tripping that I bombed. And when I walked off stage, I said, well, at least that one's out of the way, and I can't really afford to bomb on my road gig. So it's like you kind of got your mulligan out of the way. But so I know the feeling of when things start to, and a lot of it, I wish I had this insight when I was doing stand-up hardcore, because I was really in my way with the pressurized, the seriousness of each night and how pressurized I made it. And, I needed a lot of stage time just to even get to the place where I wasn't, sick to my stomach. And so that was a wear and tear that got real tricky for me. And I wonder how I'd face it today. But so I knew I was really kind of clamping up. It was not good. And I was running the risk of like being the douche in the outfit being bad. And that's the cardinal rule, is if you make a choice to wear the uniform or to wear a badge or to do something a little hokey where you use a prop, it will fuck you up. They will say, look at this douchebag with the fucking harmonica, and because your audition also sucked, right? So I was running that risk of just like having a fucking deer in the headlights look and wearing a costume, and that's going to turn off almost any casting director. But if you do a good job, they forget or they appreciate the choice to use to use a shot glass and to take a sip and to not air mime shit, or, I think that the only difference is be good, and you can almost get away with anything. You can get away with almost bad lighting if you're good. You could get away with, almost anything. And I have the good lighting and I have the good sound. And so that should free me to be worried more about, what I'm putting across. But it was a co-star, and it was very thin, and there's a famous Hello Dolly story on Broadway. Carol Channing, the grand dame of Hello Dolly and famous character. She was a very flamboyant lady of the theater, and she was a fellow alumnus from Carnegie Mellon, and I didn't know that. For a while, I didn't know that. But anyway, she's been gone for a while now, R.I.P. But there's a famous story where she's on stage, and the character playing the waiter who comes up to the table after some kind of dance or whatever, he got a laugh. He did something that got a laugh. Like, I don't know, he said, "Very well, madam," or he did a winky wink or some shit, and he got a laugh. And Carol Channing went running backstage after the scene was over and basically said, the name of the place, Hello Dolly, not Hello Waiter. And I think the guy got a reprimand or he got fired because of, it's that famous diva moment that you hear about, but the name of the place, Hello Dolly, not Hello Waiter, right? And so the point being kind of if that guy wound up being Dick Van Dyke or being somebody famous, maybe that was his way to fucking seize the moment. But really, he's just being a dick and an attention grabber and a scene stealer, and not quote unquote playing his role, which is to, make her look good, which is kind of the team player aspect that you don't get sometimes in a lot of ego-driven fields. But point being, you can run the risk, and maybe I did yesterday, run the risk of making your co-star audition, hey, it's not hello waiter, it's hello Dolly, and I'm trying to do hello waiter or hello taxi man or whatever the point. So, and I think that's a fair point that but at a certain point though, you can't stand there and look like a jerk off. And if it makes you feel so uncomfortable that you're going to regret sending it in, or even regret it gets so bad so fast in my head sometimes that it's like I'm regretting life choices because I can't reconcile that I'm doing this and that it's not working, and that I don't want to send it in, and it's this vortex of it's meaningless, but it means too much to me, and it's meaningless, but it's not meaningless if you get it. And if it's, and there's, SAG insurance, there's things on the line and there's not things on the line, and all this stuff can start to compound, and all you're trying to do is stand in your fucking, you're standing in your apartment trying to lay down a tape, and you can imagine how the pressure is when you're going in person. But at least in person, like, you don't have to four-wall the whole experience and set it all up, and so I understand why, more established actors hate the self-tape, but I can also understand that, yeah, the nerves may not be there, but the idea that you have no control because you're just sending it out into the vortex digitally, and then that starts to plague on you. And so it was a tough couple of minutes there. And then my goal nowadays is to like do 3 takes tops, so it doesn't just die on the vine, and to not belabor it, and to like not have it mean so much. But the scene was so kind of like, in a way, like deficient of something, which made me think it's incidental. It's, I started imagining how it'd be shot and how they'd probably, find a way to fucking cut me, and all these insane thoughts, and maybe not wrong, but not productive. And so eventually we did it a couple times just before we rolled, and then I said, let's try to get one. And together, even my non-actor girlfriend, we found something. We found a sort of like a little bit of a micro scene in this fractional scene sides that they sent me. It's not even a page. So we found a little thing, like there is a moment where I'm speaking, and that's where a lot of actors make the mistake that, I'm doing the talking here. I got to make sure I get these lines right and I really deliver them. But the crux of the scene is the interaction. If there's anything that's going to definitely kind of quote unquote make the cut, it's going to be a line from the star of the show asking my character a question. The chance that I might get that to stick is, so that to me was that's the interaction. That's the moment. And there's unspoken nonverbal stuff that occurs. And my girlfriend wrecked a few takes because she laughed because we came up with something together, and it was in the interaction and the listening, being interrupted or whatever. We found something. And then like all of that shit in my head just went away, and all of that pressure went away. And then it was fun. And then once I understood the language of the micro scene I was kind of directing and shooting and four-walling and self-taping and all these things that before were like, I wish I didn't have to do this, was now fun. And it's like we're making a little fucking thing to send. And so you can relax and say, you know what? I don't care. Like, I did my thing, And if they say, if the worst that can happen is you're not going to get it, and you're not going to get it anyway, right? And if it's a little bit too hokey and I'm wearing too many clothes and I have a prop and that's corny and I was a little over the top, you know what I mean? If they don't like it, they won't call me in or give it to me or call me back. But if they say he's over the top, but let's pull him back, then you'll fight another day. all this to say was that at least I didn't tank, because I've been so pissed off that I've just like white gritted teeth. You're sending something where my visage is belying the material because I'm so frustrated and pissed off, and underfed, or it gets hot when I have to turn all the fans off, and it just, and that stuff comes through. And so I fought through that, and my girl and I were able to really put something together. And I, like I said, now you send it and you forget it, and then second guess everything, or try not to. And that's just a little example of, and the reason I brought up Hollywood was I also think that because it's been so thin, the cupboard's been so bare for auditions and things like that, and everything that you're absorbing in the negative vortex of the demise of Hollywood, and how people are losing houses, and all these second ADs can't pay their mortgage, and the actors are usually the last on that list of employable. So you hear this stuff, and so that when you do get an audition, you're like, well, this is a lifeline, and you may run the risk of putting too much about it on the line, and you wonder. But again, it's a tough business. It's a tough business also when you understand that you can't really brag about an audition to anybody outside of the business, and if you don't get it, it doesn't go on your resume. So, but at the same time, it was a productive day for me, and whether you'd have to take my word at it, but I pulled something off. Now, they may just want a slot filler, and so me doing all this shit, and I had different eye lines and all this shit, it may have been too complicated, and I may have been gilding the lily and pulling focus, and that'll be why they don't, because you hear that throw it away, and yeah, I know what they mean. But that doesn't mean go dead and throw it away. It means you have to sort of have a vibe, or I don't know. So we'll see. I think it's a comedy. I know it's a comedy, and I think a little bit of an outlandish thing may stand a chance to add some flavor. The thing I do like, and I don't like to get too much praise to the Brits or start a whole xenophobic thing, but if you watch some of those British shows, they tend to not have this idea that they live by the no small parts, only small actors. And so the British shows, you'll see it like a dude at a snuff shop, or whatever they have in Britain, whatever they call a bodega. That guy's kind of good, and he's probably theater trained, and they don't just stick little meaningless shitbag scenes just to sort of flavor it. And I'm not saying that we do here, but a lot of the rhetoric of the industry types is that, yeah, the co-stars are just throw them away, and like I said, that's probably correct. But I just if I'm quote unquote auditioning for the casting director, then I'm going to give them a little something and let them redirect me, but you don't get that luxury with the self-tape. So I'm going to make a short film. Sorry. That's just the way I'm going to do it. And, so I guess this is a bit of a humble brag saying I had an audition, but even in the dark days, when you're limping around in a cast or whatever, and the industry is imploding, as they say, and things are going south, a little hope comes through. And so I guess that's the lesson today, is that the sun also rises, and that there is, the story, the prevailing wisdom isn't always how it's going for you or your intimates. And so keep your own counsel, and have fun with stuff, and try not to let that other stuff creep in. And so that was the big lesson this week, was to really it was almost involuntary the way I was bugging out. And then my girl was like, I'm not I'm doing you a solid. You can't do this. And I was like, you're fucking right. And so I cooled out, and we got something done, and it feels good to be productive on your own measure, by your own measures, you know. And so I guess I have to be glad for my own measures, and by my own measures, by my own standards, and yeah, and enough is enough with the dark, negative self-defeat, you know. Enough is enough. And, you know, not to toot your own horn, because, you know, the hustle culture is real, and the morning routine videos that we're sick of, with motherfuckers getting up at 4. I get up at 4 in the morning and I go right back to fucking sleep. So, but, you know, I'm going to physical therapy, and I'm doing my exercises at home, and I'm managing, and, you know, I'm doing it on one foot, and I'm doing self-tapes, and like, so what more should I expect from myself? And, you know, you need to recharge too and enjoy. So, I guess thanks to the universe, or thanks to, you know, whoever, that, you know, even with an injury healing, I'm feeling pretty good and productive. So, I hope you can too, in your own ways. And, you know, I just wish, I guess the perfectionism is where it reared its head, you know, and I'd love to shorten and try to stop these flare-ups before they happen. But at least now I'm able to right the ship occasionally, where before I could ruin a day, I could ruin a set. I would be sullen. If there was a 2-hour ride home after a bad set, it was a miserable 2-hour ride. And I just don't want to do that anymore. And so while I'm not going to spend too much time worrying and hoping and wondering, I got the tape in early. It's due Tuesday, and I got it in today. And, you know, I like to show that I can knock this stuff out quick. So I do like the standard wisdom of getting tapes in as soon as you're able, ahead of the deadline, just to show that you're a quick turnaround person. And also in the tiny little hopeful fantasy land of, if you're in early, you will get seen, and maybe if you can get a redirect before the deadline, if you're way off and someone happened to be killing time and looking at your tape. These are the fantasies that aren't really important, but the point is, I'm going to forget about it and be glad that I had the shot, and, you know, thanks to my agents and all that good stuff. And so we're still in it to win it. Death Session 30. We Carry the Light is still on the front burner. But now I just have to find a place to do a casual read, and let's go. And thanks, guys, and stay in it to win it. Okay, peace.